The crack of knuckles against bone echoed across Fort Bragg's training compound like a gunshot. 40 elite Navy SEALs watched in frozen horror as Lieutenant Marcus Brennan's fist connected with the jaw of the small woman in tactical gear he'd been mocking all morning. She staggered back one step. Just one. Her hand came up slowly, touching the blood at the corner of her mouth. What happened in the next 3 seconds would end a decorated officer's career and prove that the deadliest warriors don't announce themselves with noise. They let their actions speak. If you believe true strength lies in quiet competence, not loud arrogance, subscribe now and comment your city below so I can see how far this story of justice travels. This is what really happened at Fort Bragg on November 12th. 5 hours earlier. Listen up, people. We've got 36 hours to run the tightest hostage rescue simulation this task force has ever seen. Lieutenant Marcus Brennan's voice carried across the pre-dawn assembly area like he owned the morning itself. 38 SEAL operators stood in loose formation, their faces still creased from too little sleep, their bodies radiating the coiled readiness that comes from years of walking into darkness, armed with training and trust. Brennan was everything the recruitment posters promised. 6'2", shoulders that strained against his tactical shirt, a jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and a Silver Star ribbon positioned precisely above his left pocket. His boots were spotless, despite the red Carolina clay that coated everything else. His gear was arranged with obsessive symmetry. He looked like what civilians thought a SEAL should look like. This exercise replicates the Abbottabad compound raid, but with updated enemy tactics, Brennan continued, pacing before his assembled operators. We've got hostile combatants who know we're coming, civilians in the kill zone, and a 12-minute window before QRF shows up to complicate our day. Standing in the third row, barely visible behind two broad-shouldered operators, Sarah Chen adjusted the radio headset resting around her neck. She'd been with this task force for exactly 8 days. 8 days of being introduced as Communications Specialist Chen from Naval Special Warfare Support Activity. 8 days of polite nods and careful distance. 8 days of watching these men work together with the fluid precision of a lifetime spent training as one organism. Team leaders, step forward for assignments, Brennan called out. 3 senior chiefs moved to the front. Brennan handed each a tablet with mission packets. Chief Ramirez, your team takes primary entry. Chief Morrison, you've got overwatch and perimeter security. Chief Kowalski, your QRF opposition for reality check. The chiefs nodded, already studying their screens. Now, before we kit up, we need to address the elephant in the room. Brennan's voice shifted, taking on an edge that made several operators glance at each other. Command has decided, in their infinite wisdom, that this exercise needs to include our newest addition. Sarah felt every pair of eyes rotate toward her. She kept her face neutral, her posture relaxed. Specialist Chen here represents the Navy's ongoing experiment with integration, Brennan said, his tone making the word integration sound like a disease. She's qualified as a communications specialist, which means she knows how to work a radio. So let's find an appropriate role for those skills. A younger SEAL near the front, his name tape read Martinez, spoke up. Sir, if she's qualified comms, shouldn't she be integrated with the assault element? Real-time communications can— Did I ask for your tactical assessment, Petty Officer Martinez? Brennan's smile was cold. No, sir. That's right. You didn't make it through 14 years of special operations by forgetting who runs the briefing. Brennan turned back to the group. Specialist Chen will be assigned to equipment management and post-exercise debriefing documentation. She can observe the operation from the TOC and learn how actual operators conduct business. Sarah said nothing. She'd been briefed by Master Chief Raymond Torres the night before. You're here for evaluation, Lieutenant. Not your evaluation, theirs. We need to know how integration-ready these teams actually are. Stay quiet, stay professional, document everything. So she stayed quiet. Any questions? Brennan scanned the assembled faces, daring someone to challenge him. Chief Ramirez cleared his throat. Sir, with respect, having qualified comms embedded with the assault team is doctrine. If Specialist Chen has the clearance— Chief, when you make lieutenant, you can run training your way. Brennan cut him off. Until then, we do this by my standards. The standards that kept me alive through 4 combat deployments. The standards that existed before politics started dictating operational decisions. The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. Now, we've got 2 hours until execution, Brennan continued. Team leaders, get your people geared up. Weapons check at 0700. Medical brief at 0730. Any operator who isn't ready to step off at 0800 can join Specialist Chen in the talk. The formation broke apart. Operators moved toward the equipment staging area with the efficient purposefulness of men who'd done this 1,000 times. Sarah remained where she was, waiting. Brennan walked straight toward her. Specialist Chen, he said, his voice now low enough that only she could hear. Let me be crystal clear about something. I don't care what diversity checkboxes command is trying to fill. I don't care what political pressure got you assigned to this task force. On my training ground, you prove yourself, or you get people killed. Sarah met his eyes. Understood, sir. I doubt that. See, in the real teams, we don't lower standards to make people feel included. We maintain standards because lives depend on it. He leaned closer. You might have impressed some admiral with your test scores, but tests don't bleed. Tests don't die because their teammate couldn't carry her weight. I'm not asking for lowered standards, sir, Sarah said quietly. Good, because you won't get them. Brennan straightened. Equipment staging is that way. Radios need inventory check and battery replacement. Think you can handle that? Yes, sir. Outstanding. Maybe you'll actually contribute something useful today. He walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the assembly area. From the TOC building 60 yards away, Master Chief Raymond Torres watched through binoculars. He'd been a SEAL for 23 years. He'd seen every type of operator the teams produced: the silent killers, the loud heroes, the political climbers, and the true professionals. He recognized Marcus Brennan immediately. Brennan was the type who confused volume with authority, who mistook cruelty for high standards, who needed witnesses for his righteousness. Torres had served with 100 men like him. Most washed out eventually. A few made it through on pure stubbornness and good timing. Brennan was talented enough to be dangerous and insecure enough to be destructive. Torres lowered his binoculars and picked up his radio. DOC to team leaders. Be advised I'll be observing training directly. Carry on. He walked toward the equipment staging area where Sarah Chen was already beginning her assigned task. 6 hours earlier, Sarah had been someone else entirely. The naval aviator who'd flown her from Dam Neck, Virginia to Fort Bragg had called her lieutenant when she boarded. Old habit. She'd smiled and corrected him. Just Chen. I'm support staff for this trip. She'd spent the flight reviewing Brennan's file. 14 years in the teams, 3 deployments to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan. Solid operational record. Multiple commendations. Instructor certified. Promoted to lieutenant right on schedule. But there were notes in the margins, the kind that didn't appear in official records. Notes from other female service members who'd rotated through his training courses. Notes about comments, about assignments, about the subtle 1,000 ways a man in power could make clear that certain people would never really belong. Master Chief Torres had been blunt during their planning meeting. Brennan's the test case, Lieutenant. He's good enough that we can't dismiss him, influential enough that others follow his lead, and just careful enough that nothing's ever quite actionable. We need to know if the teams can actually integrate, or if men like him will poison the well permanently. And if they can't? Sarah had asked. Torres had fixed her with those steady brown eyes that had stared down terrorists and admirals with equal calm. Then we get an honest answer and we build a different path. But we need truth, not politics. Can you give us truth? She'd said yes because 3 years ago she'd graduated BUD/S in the first female integration class. She'd said yes because 14 months in DevGru's Silver Squadron had taught her that respect was earned in the dark places, where no one was watching. She'd said yes because pretending to be less than she was, even temporarily, might save future operators from washing out, not because they couldn't meet the standard, but because the system never gave them a chance to try. Now, kneeling in the red dirt of Fort Bragg with a dozen military radios spread before her, she was just Communications Specialist Chen. No rank, no history, no authority. Just another woman trying to prove she belonged in a world that had already decided she didn't. The equipment check took 40 minutes. Sarah tested each radio, replaced batteries, confirmed encryption codes. The work was mindless, muscle memory from 1,000 pre-mission preps. Her hands moved automatically while her mind cataloged everything happening around her. Chief Ramirez's team was running communications drills. Good discipline. Hand signals crisp, verbal brevity solid. Chief Morrison's Overwatch element was zeroing optics. One of his snipers, older guy, probably late 30s, was having scope trouble. Morrison knelt beside him, patiently walking through the adjustment process. Leadership through teaching, not intimidation. Chief Kowalski's QRF team was arguing about vehicle positioning. Loud, passionate, but professional. They reached consensus in 90 seconds. Trust built through years of shared experience. These were good operators, the kind who'd watch your back in hell and carry you out if you couldn't walk. But they were also watching her peripherally, measuring, judging, waiting to see if she was worth defending or just another political football they'd be forced to tolerate. Specialist Jen. She looked up. Martinez stood there, the young SEAL who'd spoken during the brief. Up close, he looked maybe 25, with the kind of face that probably got carded at bars. But his eyes were older, marked by whatever he'd seen downrange. Need something, Petty Officer? She asked. Just wanted to say, he glanced around, making sure they had privacy. What Lieutenant Brennan said in the brief. That wasn't cool. Some of us don't think that way. Sarah appreciated the gesture. I'm here to do a job. His opinion doesn't change that. Yeah, but still. Martinez shifted his weight, uncomfortable. My sister's trying to get into the academy. She wants to fly jets. Every time someone treats qualified women like they're charity cases, it makes her path harder. Your sister sounds like she's got the right mentality, Sarah said. Tell her standards don't care about gender. They just care if you can meet them. Martinez nodded. Will do. And hey, if you need anything, equipment, questions about how things work around here, I'm Tent Delta 3. Appreciated. He walked away, and Sarah felt the tiniest crack in the wall of isolation. One ally. Maybe more, watching to see which way the wind would blow. She was finishing the last radio check when boots appeared in her peripheral vision. Expensive boots. Obsessively clean boots. How's that inventory coming, Specialist? Brennan stood over her, arms crossed. Behind him, 3 junior officers clustered. His audience, his validation. Complete, sir, Sarah said. All radios operational, fresh batteries, cryptocurrent. Outstanding. His tone suggested it was anything but. "Tell me, Specialist, what's your qualification level on the Harris AN/PRC 152? "Operator level proficient, sir." "Really?" Brennan reached down and picked up one of the radios. "So you can configure a SyncSCAR's hopset under combat conditions?" "Yes, sir." "Program a SATCOM frequency with encryption?" "Yes, sir." "Interface with close air support while managing 3 ground elements simultaneously?" "Yes, sir." Brennan's jaw tightened. He'd been trying to find her limit, to expose the gap between her claimed qualifications and reality. But Sarah had configured these radios in Pakistan while mortar rounds walked toward her position. She'd managed air assets during a building collapse in Syria with her left arm broken and one teammate bleeding out beside her. She knew these systems the way concert pianists knew their instruments. "Well," Brennan said slowly, "I suppose Command's standards for proficient have evolved considerably." He set the radio down with exaggerated care. "In my day, we actually had to use this equipment in combat before claiming expertise." Sarah said nothing. The bait was obvious. "Tell me about your combat experience, Specialist Chen. Where have you deployed?" This was the trap. If she maintained her cover as support personnel, she'd have to claim minimal combat exposure. If she revealed her actual record, the whole evaluation fell apart. "Classified deployments, sir," she said carefully. "Support role." "Support role?" Brennan's smile was vicious. "So you've never actually been in a firefight? Never had to make split-second decisions with lives on the line? Never felt what it's like when the training becomes real and people die if you make mistakes?" "I didn't say that, sir." "You didn't have to." He gestured to the radios. "This is all theoretical for you. You learned it in some air-conditioned classroom at Dam Neck, got your certification, and now you're here to check a box on someone's diversity report." The 3 junior officers behind him snickered. Sarah kept her breathing steady. "With respect, sir, I'm qualified for the position I hold." "Qualified on paper." Brennan crouched down to her eye level. "Here's what you don't understand, Specialist. The teams aren't about paperwork. They're about the man to your left and the man to your right trusting you with their lives. That trust is earned in blood and sweat and years of proving yourself. You can't show up with a certificate and expect that trust to just materialize." "I'm not expecting anything, sir. I'm here to work." "No." His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. "You're here because someone decided their political career needed you to be here. You're here because admirals who've never been shot at think the teams should look more like a college brochure. You're here because the standards that kept us alive for 50 years apparently matter less than making Congress happy." He stood abruptly. "Equipment check complete. You can observe from the TOC during exercise execution. Try not to distract the actual operators." Sarah watched him walk away, his junior officers trailing like pilot fish. From 30 yards away, Master Chief Torres had heard every word. He'd positioned himself deliberately, wanting to see how Brennan operated when he thought no one important was watching. The performance had been textbook. Loud enough to establish dominance, quiet enough to avoid official complaint, cruel enough to wound, but wrapped in enough professional language to provide deniability. Torres had seen this movie before. It always ended the same way. He just hadn't expected it to end quite so dramatically. The exercise kicked off at 0800 hours. Sarah sat in the TOC, Tactical Operations Center, surrounded by monitors showing drone feeds, helmet cameras, and tactical displays. The operations officer, a commander named Phillips, ran the show with quiet competence. "Assault element, report status," Phillips said into his headset. "Ramirez here, 200 meters from objective, on schedule. Morrison, overwatch positions? Set and locked, We own all approaches. Kowalski, QRF ready? Rolling in 7 mics on your call, sir. Sarah listened to the professional brevity, the practiced efficiency. These operators were poetry in motion, every word precisely chosen, every second accounted for. Chief Ramirez's team was executing a perfect infiltration. Morrison's snipers had established fields of fire that would make any enemy combatant regret being born. And she was sitting in a climate-controlled room, watching it happen on screens.
Specialist Chen, Commander Phillips said during a lull in radio traffic. You qualified on tactical communications coordination?
Yes, sir.
Good. If my primary comms guy goes down during the exercise, you're backup. Pay attention to how he manages the net. It was a small thing, an acknowledgement that she might actually be useful, but it mattered. The exercise unfolded with the controlled chaos that made special operations beautiful to watch. Ramirez's team hit the objective building with overwhelming precision. Morrison's snipers eliminated simulated threats with mathematical accuracy. Kowalski's QRF provided exactly the right amount of pressure to test the assault team's adaptability. Lieutenant Brennan, serving as exercise controller, called out scenario modifications over the command net. Assault team, be advised. 1 civilian has barricaded in northwest room. You have hostile combatant using them as shield. Chief Ramirez's voice came back steady. Copy, adjusting. Sarah watched the helmet camera feeds as Ramirez's number 2, a soft-spoken operator named Chen, no relation, though they'd joked about it during introductions, cleared the room with a precision that would have made surgeons jealous. Simulated hostile neutralized. Simulated civilian extracted. Textbook. Time on target, 4 minutes, 20 seconds, Phillips announced. Outstanding execution, people. But Brennan wasn't satisfied. Hold position, he called. I'm adding a complication. Civilian in distress, medical emergency in South Corridor. Assault team, respond. Sarah frowned. Medical emergencies weren't part of the original scenario. Brennan was improvising, testing, pushing. Ramirez adapted immediately, detaching his medic to handle the simulated casualty. Clock's ticking, Chief. Brennan's voice had an edge now. Hostage has chest trauma. What's your medic doing? The helmet camera showed the medic, call sign Doc, assessing, treating, preparing for evacuation. Sir, requesting medevac bird, Ramirez said. Denied, Brennan responded. Weather's socked in. You carry your casualty out or they die. What's it going to be? Sarah saw the calculation happening in real time. The assault team was already operating on a tight timeline. Carrying a casualty would slow them. But leaving someone to die violated every principle these men held sacred. We carry them, Ramirez said without hesitation. Copy. Casualty weighs 80 pounds, adult male, dead weight. Figure it out. The exercise continued, now with Ramirez's team burdened by the simulated casualty. Their movements slowed. Their security posture tightened. But they adapted, covered each other, and pushed forward. Sarah found herself leaning forward, invested despite herself. These operators were artists, turning chaos into choreography. Assault team, be advised. QRF response time shortened, Brennan announced. You've got 2 minutes before you're compromised. Copy. Ramirez's breathing was slightly labored now. Double timing. They made it to the extraction point with 30 seconds to spare. The exercise controllers called ENDEX, end of exercise, and the training area went still. All elements consolidated at rally point for debrief in 15 minutes, Commander Phillips announced. Sarah stood, gathering her notes. She'd documented everything: team performance, communications protocols, decision matrices. Master Chief Torres would want a full written report. As she exited the TOC into the bright Carolina morning, she nearly collided with Lieutenant Brennan. Specialist Chen? His face was flushed, whether from heat or anger she couldn't tell. Did you learn anything useful watching actual operators work? Yes, sir. Chief Ramirez's team demonstrated excellent. I wasn't asking for a tactical analysis. Brennan cut her off. I was asking if you learned your place. The mask slipped. Just for a second, but Sarah saw it.
This wasn't about standards or qualifications. This was personal. Brennan needed her to be less than him, needed her to fail, needed the world to confirm that his prejudices were actually principles. I learned, Sarah said carefully, that leadership adapts to circumstances, rather than forcing circumstances to validate biases.
Brennan's face went red. You want to talk about bias, specialist? How about the bias that got you here? The bias that says we need to compromise decades of proven standards because someone's feelings might get hurt?
I never asked for compromised standards, sir.
You didn't have to. Your mere presence is a compromise. His voice was rising now, and other operators were starting to notice. Every minute I spend managing the optics of having you here is a minute I'm not spending making these operators better. Every scenario I have to adjust because, God forbid, we make you uncomfortable is a scenario where real training gets diluted.
Sir, I haven't asked for special treatment.
You don't need to ask. It's baked into every interaction. Brennan was fully shouting now. You want to prove you belong? Fine. Let's test that. After debrief, we're running combatives training. You're going to demonstrate basic defensive techniques. If you can't handle that, I want you to look these operators in the eye and tell them you deserve to be here. Sarah felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes on her. The gauntlet had been thrown. If she declined, she was weak. If she accepted, she played into his game. Master Chief Torres materialized beside them, his presence like gravity pulling everyone's attention.
Lieutenant Brennan,
Torres said quietly.
A word. Master Chief, I'm conducting training. Now, Lieutenant.
The two men walked 15 feet away. Sarah couldn't hear their conversation, but she could see Brennan's body language shifting from aggressive to defensive.
Torres spoke calmly, never raising his voice, but Brennan's face went from red to white. When they returned, Brennan's voice was tight with controlled fury. Specialist Chen, report to training mat area in 30 minutes. We're running a basic combatives demonstration. You'll assist. Yes, sir. Torres caught her eye briefly. A warning flashed there. Be ready. The next 2 hours would change everything. The training mat was old canvas stretched over foam, stained with years of sweat, and marked with scuff patterns from thousands of drills. Sarah arrived exactly on time, already changed into the standard physical training uniform. Around her, 38 SEALs formed a loose circle, their faces showing everything from curiosity to discomfort to outright hostility. Brennan stood at the center like a prosecutor preparing his closing argument. Gather in, people. We're going to cover basic combatives fundamentals, and Specialist Chen has volunteered to help demonstrate proper defensive technique. The way he said volunteered made it clear no volunteering had occurred. This is about survival. When your weapon's gone, when you're alone, when it's just you and the enemy, technique is all that stands between you and a body bag. Chief Ramirez shifted his weight uncomfortably. Sir, shouldn't we pair people by weight class for safety? That's exactly my point, Chief. Brennan's smile was razored. The enemy doesn't care about weight classes. They don't care about fairness. A 120-pound operator needs to defend against a 200-pound combatant, just like everyone else. Lower standards don't exist downrange. Sarah kept her face neutral, but her mind was calculating angles, distances, leverage points. Brennan outweighed her by 75 pounds easily. He had 6 inches of reach. But he also telegraphed his intentions like billboard advertisements, and his stance was already too wide, too aggressive, sacrificing mobility for intimidation. Specialist, center mat, Brennan commanded. She walked forward, her movements loose and controlled. The circle of seals closed in slightly, everyone wanting a better view of whatever was about to happen. "Basic wrist control escape," Brennan announced, grabbing her right wrist with unnecessary force. His grip was meant to hurt, to prove his point about strength differential. "When an opponent establishes grip dominance, your options are limited. You need explosive power to break free, which is why smaller operators face statistical disadvantage." Sarah said nothing, letting him lecture. "The Standard Academy teaches rotation against the thumb," he continued, twisting her wrist to demonstrate the vulnerability. "But that assumes your opponent doesn't know the counter. Watch." He increased pressure, bending her wrist at an angle that should have brought her to her knees. Should have. Sarah's face remained placid, her breathing unchanged. Years of pain tolerance training in SEER school had recalibrated what her body registered as actual threat versus temporary discomfort. Brennan's jaw tightened. "You're supposed to attempt the escape, specialist." "You didn't instruct me to, sir." A few SEALs snickered. Brennan's face flushed. "Fine. Attempt standard escape. Now." Sarah executed the technique exactly as taught in basic training. Rotate against thumb, step back, create distance. Textbook perfect. Brennan maintained his grip easily. "See?" he addressed the crowd. "Technique without power is theory. This is reality." Martinez spoke up from the circle. "Sir, she executed the move correctly. If you'd released as a training partner should, Martinez, are you suggesting the enemy will release when asked politely?" Brennan's voice dripped sarcasm. "Please, enlighten us with your extensive combat experience. Oh wait, you've been in the teams for what, 18 months? Martinez's face went red, but he shut his mouth. Sarah felt the dynamic shifting. Brennan was isolating not just her, but anyone who might defend her. Classic power play. Make the cost of alliance higher than the cost of silence. "Let's try something more dynamic," Brennan said, releasing her wrist. "Front headlock position. Common in close quarters when grappling goes to the ground." He moved behind her, wrapping his arm around her neck in a loose front headlock. The position was controlling without being immediately dangerous, designed to demonstrate dominance while maintaining training safety margins. From here, the attacker controls your posture, can strike your body, can transition to a choke. His voice was professorial now, enjoying the teaching moment. Defense requires hip escape, hand fighting, and aggressive counterattack. Hesitation gets you killed. Sarah could feel his heartbeat against her shoulder blade. Elevated. He was enjoying this more than he should. This wasn't about training anymore. It was about humiliation. About proving that she didn't belong. About validating 13 years of assumptions that women couldn't hack it in the teams. Specialist, defend. She executed the standard defense, dropped her hips, fought his grip with both hands, created space, and pivoted out. Again, textbook perfect. Again, Brennan maintained position easily through superior strength. "See the problem?" Brennan addressed his audience. "Perfect technique, zero effectiveness. This is what happens when we prioritize inclusion over capability." Chief Morrison, the Overwatch team leader, spoke carefully. "Sir, with respect, training partners are supposed to allow technique execution for learning purposes. Real resistance comes later." "Training partners are supposed to simulate reality, Chief." Brennan's tone was dismissive. "Reality is that physical mismatches exist. Reality is that upper body strength matters. Reality is that some people simply don't have the physical tools for this job, and pretending otherwise is dangerous." Sarah remained silent, locked in his grip, waiting. Master Chief Torres stood outside the circle, arms crossed, watching everything with those unreadable brown eyes. Brennan shifted his weight,
adjusting his hold to something tighter, more restrictive. Let's discuss choke defense. When you can't breathe, technique falls apart. Panic sets in. This is where mental toughness separates operators from pretenders. He increased pressure against her carotid artery, not enough to render her unconscious, but enough to restrict blood flow, to create that crawling panic sensation that came from oxygen deprivation. Sarah controlled her breathing, relaxed into the hold, conserved energy. She'd been choked unconscious 17 times during training.
This was mild. Notice how she's not panicking, Brennan said, surprised despite himself. That's good. But survival isn't about staying calm while you die. It's about effective counterattack. He released the choke, and Sarah sucked in air with measured breaths. "You good?" Brennan asked, and for a moment something almost human flickered in his voice.
"Yes, sir."
"Outstanding. Because we're going to run it again. And this time you're going to show these operators what happens when technique meets reality." They cycled through the sequence 5 more times. Each iteration, Brennan increased intensity. Each time, Sarah executed perfect technique. Each time, he powered through it, proving his point about strength differential. The SEALs watched in increasingly uncomfortable silence. This had stopped being training and become something else. Something darker. "Enough," Chief Ramirez finally said.
"Sir, I think we've demonstrated the point."
"Have we?" Brennan released Sarah and stepped back. "Because what I've demonstrated is that Specialist Chen, despite apparently being qualified, cannot defend herself against a realistic opponent. What I've demonstrated is that in actual combat, she becomes a liability." Sarah straightened, rolling her shoulders.
"With respect, sir, you haven't demonstrated anything except that you're stronger than me. That was never in question."
The circle went dead silent. Brennan's face transformed, fury replacing condescension. "Excuse me?"
"You wanted to prove strength matters. Congratulations, you're stronger."
Sarah's voice remained level.
"But combat effectiveness isn't determined by who wins a strength contest. It's determined by mission success, and mission success comes from teams using their different capabilities in complementary ways."
"Is that what they taught you in your support role?" Brennan's voice was venomous now.
"Participation trophy philosophy? Everyone gets a gold star for trying?"
"No, sir. They taught me that operators who rely solely on physical strength develop predictable patterns. They taught me that the most dangerous combatants are the ones who understand leverage, timing, and psychology. They taught me that ego is a tactical vulnerability." Several SEALs glanced at each other. This quiet communications specialist had just challenged a combat-decorated lieutenant in front of 40 witnesses. Brennan stepped closer, invading her space. "You think you understand combat? You think your classroom lectures taught you something about real violence?"
"I think real violence doesn't care about gender, sir. It cares about competence."
"Then let's test your competence." Brennan's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Full contact drill. You defend, I attack. We'll see how your theories about leverage hold up when someone's actually trying to hurt you." Martinez stepped forward.
"Sir, that's outside training parameters. We need safety protocols."
"This entire exercise is outside normal parameters, Martinez." Brennan spun on him. "We're training people to survive terrorist attacks, not teaching kindergarten playground rules. Specialist Chen wants to prove she belongs? Fine. Prove it." Torres's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Lieutenant Brennan, a word. Now." Brennan's face went through several expressions: anger, frustration, calculation. "Master Chief, I'm conducting sanctioned combatives training." "And I'm directing you to step aside, now." Torres's voice held no room for negotiation. They walked to the edge of the mat.
Torres spoke quietly enough that Sarah couldn't hear words, but she could read body language. Torres was giving Brennan an out, a way to de-escalate without losing face completely. Brennan shook his head, said something sharp. Torres responded with something that made Brennan go rigid. When they returned, Brennan's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "We're going to run one more demonstration. Basic strike defense. Specialist Chen will demonstrate proper blocking technique against simulated attacks." "Thank you, sir," Sarah said, knowing this wasn't over. Brennan positioned himself in front of her, fists raised in a basic fighting stance. "I'm going to throw slow strikes. You're going to demonstrate proper defensive blocks. This is about technique, not contact. Everyone clear?" Nods around the circle. "Begin." He threw a lazy jab toward her face. Sarah parried it easily, redirecting the force past her shoulder. Standard blocking drill, the kind taught to every sailor in basic training. "Good," Brennan said. "Again." Another jab, another parry. The rhythm was almost meditative, a dance they'd both practiced 1,000 times with 1,000 different partners. But something was building. Sarah could feel it in the way Brennan's breathing changed, in the set of his shoulders, in the micro-expressions flickering across his face. This wasn't about training anymore. This was about him needing to win, to prove, to dominate. "Faster," he said. The jabs came quicker. Sarah's hands moved with precision, each block economical and effective. She wasn't trying to show off. She was simply doing what she'd been trained to do. "Combinations," Brennan announced. Jab cross, hook. Each combination slightly faster, slightly harder. Sarah's defense remained solid, her footwork keeping her positioned perfectly, her hands protecting her center line. The SEALs were leaning in now, recognizing something they all understood: technical excellence. This quiet communications specialist moved like someone who'd spent years on the mats, whose muscle memory was carved from repetition. And Brennan saw it too. Saw the recognition in his operator's eyes, saw his narrative crumbling, saw that his demonstration was backfiring spectacularly. "Add takedown defense," he said abruptly. This wasn't part of basic striking drills. This was escalation. He shot for a double-leg takedown, a wrestling move designed to drive through an opponent and slam them to the mat. Sarah sprawled perfectly, hips back, hands fighting his grip, maintaining balance. He couldn't complete the takedown. Brennan reset, frustration evident. "Again!" Same result. Sarah's takedown defense was flawless. "Chief Morrison," Brennan called out, breathing hard. "What do you see?" Morrison looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I see solid defensive fundamentals. From someone who's supposedly never been in combat? From someone whose qualification is working a radio?" Morrison said nothing. Brennan turned back to Sarah, and she saw it in his eyes. The moment when training became personal, when instruction became attack, when an officer stopped being a professional and became just another man who couldn't handle being wrong. "You're not taking this seriously," he said. "I'm executing every technique you've asked for, sir. No, you're performing. You're putting on a show. You think this is a game?" "I think this is training, sir." "Training?" His voice rose. "You want to know what real training feels like? What real pressure feels like?" "Lieutenant," Torres's voice carried a warning. Brennan ignored him. "On the battlefield, nobody goes slow. Nobody pulls their punches. There's only this." He threw a full-speed right cross aimed at her face. No warning, no training discipline, just sudden, violent intent. Sarah slipped the punch by inches, felt the air displacement as his fist whistled past her ear. The circle of SEALs gasped collectively. "Sir, what the hell?" Chief Ramirez started forward. Brennan was already resetting, throwing another punch, this one a hooking blow toward her jaw. Sarah parried it, but the force jarred her arm.
This wasn't controlled training. This was assault. "You want to be an operator?" Brennan snarled. "Prove it! Fight back!" "Sir, stop!" Martinez yelled. Another punch, this one grazing her shoulder as she twisted away. The circle was breaking down, SEALs shouting, starting to intervene. But everything was happening too fast. Sarah's mind went cold and clinical. Brennan had crossed the line. This was no longer training. This was a superior officer assaulting a subordinate in front of 40 witnesses. She could defend herself. Every instinct screamed at her to drop him where he stood. But if she did, the entire evaluation was compromised. If she fought back, she became the aggressor, the woman who couldn't control her emotions, the liability he'd claimed she was. So she defended, only defended. Each movement precise, economical, professional. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was simply not letting him hurt her. And that made him even angrier. "Stand still!" he roared, throwing a combination that would have hospitalized a civilian. Sarah flowed between the strikes like water, her body remembering 14 months of DevGru training where the other operators, men who respected her, had pushed her to her absolute limits in preparation for the real thing. This was nothing compared to Silver Squadron's basement gym at Dam Neck. Brennan was breathing hard now, sweating, his technique degrading with each missed strike. He was bigger, stronger, but Sarah was faster, more technical, and most importantly, she wasn't emotionally compromised. "Enough!" Torres's voice boomed across the training area. Brennan hesitated, his fist drawn back for another strike. "I said enough, Lieutenant! Step back, now!" The circle of SEALs had tightened, several of them positions to intervene physically if needed. This had gone from demonstration to disaster. Brennan lowered his fist slowly, his chest heaving. "She needs to learn." "The only person here who needs to learn something is you," Torres said, his voice deadly quiet. "Get off my mat." "Master Chief, I'm conducting training." "You're assaulting a subordinate. There's a difference. Off the mat." Brennan looked around the circle, seeking support, finding only disgust and discomfort in the faces staring back at him. Even his junior officer groupies were backing away. He turned back to Sarah, and his face transformed one last time. The mask of professional instruction fell away completely, leaving only naked rage and humiliation. "You think you've won something here?" he said quietly. "You think embarrassing me in front of my operators proves anything? I've survived 4 combat tours. I've earned my place here. You're just a political stunt that'll wash out the moment things get real." Sarah met his eyes. "I'm not trying to embarrass you, sir. I'm trying to do my job." "Your job is to be a checkbox on someone's report, nothing more." "If you truly believe that," she said softly, "then you don't understand what this job actually is." Something in Brennan's expression shifted. For just a second, Sarah saw beneath the anger to something worse. Fear. Fear that he might be wrong. Fear that his entire worldview might be built on assumptions that were crumbling before his eyes. Fear that, if she could belong here, then what did that say about him? That fear made him dangerous. "We're not done," he said. "Tomorrow, full mission profile. You want to prove you belong? You'll embed with assault team. Real pressure, real stakes, real evaluation. We'll see how long your composure lasts when lives are on the line." Torres stepped between them. "Lieutenant, go cool off. That's an order." Brennan stared at Torres for a long moment, then turned and walked away, his back rigid with fury. The circle of SEALs slowly dispersed, everyone uncomfortable, no one sure what they'd just witnessed.
Martinez approached Sarah cautiously. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "That was—" He struggled for words. "That wasn't right. What he did. None of us thought that was right." Sarah nodded, but didn't trust herself to speak. The adrenaline was still coursing through her system, her hands wanting to shake, her breath wanting to come in gasps. But she held it together, because that's what professionals did. Chief Ramirez joined them. "Specialist Chen, for what it's worth, your defensive technique was solid. Really solid. Where'd you train?"
"Various places, Chief."
He studied her face, and Sarah saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. "Various places, right. You know, we've got a couple guys in my platoon who trained at Dam Neck with the advanced cadre.
"They move kinda like you just moved." Sarah said nothing. "Anyway," Ramirez continued carefully, "if Lieutenant Brennan makes good on his threat about tomorrow's exercise, you'll be with my team. I run a professional outfit. You'll be judged on performance, not politics. Fair enough?" "More than fair, Chief. Thank you." Torres waited until everyone had cleared out before approaching Sarah. "Walk with me, Lieutenant." They moved away from the training area into the shade of an equipment building where no one could overhear. "That went sideways faster than expected," Torres said. "Yes, Master Chief." "You handled it well. Didn't take the bait, didn't compromise the evaluation. But now we've got a problem." "Sir?" "Brennan's not going to let this go. His ego won't allow it. Tomorrow's exercise will be his attempt to prove he was right all along." Torres paused. "The question is, do we let it play out, or do we pull you now and write this up as a failed evaluation?" Sarah considered. "What happens if we pull now? We report that integration faces significant cultural resistance from mid-level leadership. We recommend slower implementation, more vetting of training cadre, possibly separate development track for female operators." Torres's face was grim. "We buy another 5 years of bureaucratic study while nothing actually changes? And if we let it play out? Then tomorrow you embed with Ramirez's team on a full mission profile. Brennan will be looking for any excuse to prove your reliability. If you make even one mistake, he'll use it to justify everything he said. If you perform well," Torres smiled slightly, "then we get truth. We get data that's undeniable." "What's the risk assessment, Master Chief?" "Honestly, Brennan's unstable. He crossed lines today that should have him relieved already. I've documented it all. But he's got friends in the Pentagon, and this evaluation is politically sensitive. If something goes wrong tomorrow, if you get hurt, if another operator gets hurt because of the distraction, if this turns into a circus, it sets the program back a decade." Sarah watched 2 young SEALs jogging past, their easy camaraderie evident. "What's your recommendation, Master Chief?" Torres was quiet for a long moment. "My recommendation? You're already better than half the operators on this base, and they don't even know it yet. You've earned your Trident. You've earned your place in DevGru. But earn doesn't mean accepted. Brennan represents something bigger than himself. He represents every operator who's scared that change means their sacrifice didn't matter." He looked at her directly. "So my recommendation is, we finish this. We let you show these operators who you really are. Because the teams don't need another study or another report. They need to see with their own eyes that the standard doesn't change, only who meets it." "Then we finish it," Sarah said. "Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Torres started to walk away, then paused. "Lieutenant, when this is over, when they know who you really are, that's when the real work begins. Today was one man's ego. Tomorrow might be 40 men's assumptions. You ready for that?" "I've been ready since BUD/S, Master Chief." "Yeah," Torres said quietly.
I believe you have.
Sarah walked back to her assigned quarters as the sun began setting over Fort Bragg. Tomorrow would reveal everything. Tomorrow, Brennan would either break or be broken. Tomorrow, 40 SEAL operators would confront their assumptions about who belonged in their brotherhood. And tomorrow, Sarah Chen would stop being a communications specialist and become exactly who she'd always been. A warrior who'd proven herself in the darkness and was tired of pretending to be anything less. The mission briefing started at 0530 hours, the sky still dark enough that the fluorescent lights inside the briefing room felt like an assault. Sarah sat in the back row with Chief Ramirez's assault team, 8 operators who'd introduced themselves with varying degrees of warmth. Most were professional, a few were cautiously friendly. One, a broad-shouldered senior chief named Kowalski, had simply nodded and said, "Keep up and we're good." Lieutenant Brennan stood at the front, pointing to satellite imagery projected on the wall. If yesterday's confrontation had rattled him, he showed no sign. His uniform was crisp, his voice steady, his demeanor that of a seasoned combat leader preparing his team for a complex operation. Target building is a 3-story structure, 12 rooms, multiple entry points. Intelligence indicates 4 hostile combatants and 3 civilian hostages. Your mission is extraction, with 0 civilian casualties. He clicked to the next slide. Complication. 1 hostage is injured and cannot walk. You will carry them out. The operators leaned forward, studying the building layout. Assault team, you've got Chief Ramirez on point. Breacher, Kowalski. Medic, Chen. He paused deliberately. Communications specialist, our specialist Chen, will be embedded with assault element to coordinate between ground and overwatch. Sarah felt every eye in the room shift toward her. "Sir," Chief Ramirez said carefully, "if Specialist Chen is running comms, she should be positioned with me at the front of the stack. Real-time coordination requires—" "She'll be mid-stack," Brennan interrupted. "Protected position. If she can't keep up, she falls back to rally point. I won't risk this mission on an untested variable." "Copy that, sir," Ramirez said, but his tone suggested he didn't agree. Brennan continued the briefing, detailing timing, contingencies, and evaluation criteria. Sarah took notes, her mind already running through communications protocols, frequency management, and coordination procedures. This was her actual specialty, not just talking on radios, but orchestrating the deadly ballet of multiple teams moving in synchronized violence. "One more thing," Brennan said, as the briefing concluded. "This exercise has live fire clearance, munitions for building clearing, but perimeter security will use live rounds for realism. Treat every moment like actual combat. Mistakes have consequences." The room went quiet. Live fire exercises were rare, reserved for the most experienced teams. The risk level had just jumped exponentially. "Any questions?" Brennan's eyes found Sarah. "Specialist Chen, you comfortable operating in a live fire environment?" "Yes, sir." "You've done it before?" The trap was obvious. If she claimed extensive live fire experience, it contradicted her cover as support personnel. If she claimed inexperience, Brennan had justification to pull her. "I'm qualified and comfortable, sir." "That's not what I asked." Master Chief Torres spoke from the doorway. "Lieutenant, Specialist Chen's qualifications are documented and current. Let's focus on mission execution." Brennan's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Dismissed. Kit up. Step off in 45 minutes. The operators filed out, Sarah moving with Ramirez's team toward the armory. Martinez caught up to her in the hallway. "Hey, you need help with gear setup?" "I'm good, thanks." Cool. Just stay close to Kowalski during the assault. He's been doing this for 15 years. He'll keep you safe." Sarah appreciated the concern, but recognized the assumption underneath it, that she needed protecting, that she was a liability to be managed
rather than an asset to be utilized.
In the armory, she drew her assigned weapons: M4 carbine, Sig Sauer P226 sidearm, flashbang grenades, and a full combat load of magazines. Her hands moved through the weapons check automatically: chamber clear, function check, optics zeroed, magazines loaded and seated properly. Kowalski watched from across the room. "You know your way around an M4.
"Yes, Senior Chief."
"Good. Stay in your lane, follow instructions, and this'll go smooth." He paused. "You got kids?"
The question surprised her.
"No, Senior Chief." "Good. This job's hard enough without that weight." He slung his own rifle. "Let's move." The assault team gathered at the staging area, running final communications checks. Sarah settled into her role, monitoring 3 different radio frequencies simultaneously, ensuring clean signal on all nets. The Tactical Operations Center confirmed ready status. Overwatch teams reported positions set. "All elements, this is Brennan. Mission is go. Execute, execute, execute." Ramirez's team moved out, 8 operators plus Sarah, flowing through the darkness toward the target building. Their movement was professional poetry. Hand signals precise, spacing perfect, each member instinctively knowing where the others were. Sarah maintained position mid-stack, her radio quietly feeding her updates from Overwatch, from the TOC, from QRF holding in reserve. She relayed critical information to Ramirez through whispered updates.
"Overwatch confirms no movement. East side clear. Thermal shows 4 heat signatures, 2nd floor, northwest corner."
Ramirez nodded, adjusting his approach. They reached the breach point, stacked against the wall. Kowalski prepped the door charge. Sarah felt her heart rate slow, her breathing deepen, her mind entering that crystalline state of focus that came from training and experience.
"Breacher ready,"
Kowalski whispered. "Assault ready," Ramirez confirmed. "Overwatch ready," came the voice through Sarah's earpiece. 3, 2, 1. Execute. The door exploded inward. Ramirez flowed through first, weapon up, scanning. The team followed in perfect sequence, each operator owning a sector, covering angles, moving like water through the structure. "Room 1 clear."
"Room 2 clear."
Sarah maintained communications, updating Overwatch on their progress, coordinating the external security perimeter, managing the tactical picture. "Second floor, movement," Ramirez called. The team hit the stairs, speed and precision balancing on a knife's edge. Sarah kept pace, her weapon ready, her mind processing 6 different information streams simultaneously. They hit the 2nd floor landing, and everything accelerated. "Contact left!" Simunitions cracked through the air, paint-marking rounds that hurt like hell but wouldn't kill. The team engaged, their training taking over. 2 role players acting as hostile combatants went down under controlled fire. "2 hostiles down, pushing forward," Ramirez reported. Sarah relayed to TOC. "Assault has engaged. 2 enemy neutralized, continuing to objective." They cleared 3 more rooms, found 2 of the civilian hostages, role players with civilian vests. The team secured them, moving them to a safe room. "1 civilian still missing," Ramirez said. "Medical emergency, remember? Find them." The team split, clearing the remaining 2nd floor rooms with methodical intensity. Sarah stayed with Ramirez, her radio crackling with updates from perimeter security, from Overwatch, from the role players acting as enemy force. "Northeast room," Martinez called. "Got the wounded civilian." The team converged. The role player was lying on the floor, acting injured, clutching his chest. The team's medic, actual call sign, Doc, knelt beside him. "Simulated chest trauma, difficulty breathing," Doc reported. "Needs immediate evac." "Can he walk?" Ramirez asked. "Negative. We carry him or he dies," Sarah spoke into a radio.
TOC, assault has located wounded civilian, requires manual extraction. Request medevac at Rally Point Alpha.
Brennan's voice came back sharp. Denied. Weather's compromised. No air assets available. You carry him out or he bleeds out on that floor. Clock's ticking, Ramirez. Ramirez didn't hesitate. Kowalski, you and Martinez on casualty carry. Everyone else maintains security. We move fast, we move together. The team reorganized, 2 operators preparing to carry the role player in a fireman's carry between them. Sarah calculated the timing. This would slow them significantly, reduce their security posture, make them vulnerable. Overwatch, be advised assault element is moving with casualty, reduced speed, she transmitted. Request enhanced perimeter coverage. Overwatch copies, adjusting. They started moving, the team flowing back through the building with practiced efficiency, despite the burden of the wounded role player.
Sarah maintained her position, her situational awareness heightened, processing the tactical picture. They hit the first floor, approaching the exit. "Hold!" Ramirez commanded suddenly. Everyone froze. "I've got movement outside, northwest corner. Overwatch, confirm?" Sarah's earpiece crackled. "Overwatch confirms. 2 additional enemy role players moving to flank your exit point." "Brennan's adding complications," Ramirez muttered. "Okay, we adapt. Alternative exit, southeast side." They pivoted, the team moving with the fluid flexibility that separated good operators from great ones. Sarah updated the TOC, coordinated the perimeter shifts, kept everyone synchronized. They exited through the southeast door, emerging into the pre-dawn darkness. 50 yards to the rally point. 50 yards carrying a casualty with possible enemy contact. "Move!" Ramirez ordered. They pushed forward, weapons up, scanning sectors. Kowalski and Martinez struggled with the weight of the role player between them. Their breathing labored. 25 yards. "Contact right!" someone yelled. More simunitions cracked through the darkness. The team returned fire, maintaining movement, protecting the casualty, refusing to stop. 10 yards. They reached the rally point, the casualty secured, the entire team accounted for. Sarah's radio erupted with confirmations from all elements. Overwatch reporting enemy role players neutralized, perimeter security confirming extraction route clear, TOC validating mission success. "And X, and X, and X," Brennan's voice called over the command net. "All players, exercise complete. Consolidate at debrief point." The team relaxed slightly, adrenaline still pumping, but the immediate pressure released. Several operators clapped each other on the back. "Good run, people," Ramirez said. "Clean execution." Kowalski approached Sarah. "Your comms were solid, kept us informed, didn't clutter the net with unnecessary traffic. Proper work." "Thank you, Senior Chief." Martinez grinned. "See? Told you she'd keep up." They walked back toward the debrief area, the sky beginning to lighten in the east. Sarah felt the team's energy shifting. She'd performed well, proven competent, earned a measure of respect. For the first time since arriving at Fort Bragg, she felt like maybe, possibly, this evaluation might actually succeed. Then they reached the debrief area, and Lieutenant Brennan was waiting. His face was stone, his posture rigid. Master Chief Torres stood beside him, along with Commander Phillips from the TOC. The assembled operators formed up, expecting the standard after-action review, praise for what went well, constructive criticism for improvements. "Assault team, front and center," Brennan commanded. Ramirez's team moved forward, Sarah with them. "That was acceptable execution," Brennan began. "You completed the mission objectives within the time parameters. However, we need to discuss a significant deficiency that could have compromised the entire operation." The team glanced at each other, confused. Brennan pointed at Sarah. "Specialist Chen, your performance today demonstrated exactly the problem I've been highlighting. You maintained communications adequately, but your physical positioning created tactical vulnerabilities." "Sir?" Ramirez's voice held warning.
Specialist Chen maintained proper spacing and sector discipline throughout. She slowed the team down, Brennan interrupted. When you were carrying the casualty, she fell back 3 times, forcing the rear security to adjust. In actual combat, those adjustments create gaps that enemies exploit. Sarah kept her face neutral, but her mind was replaying the mission. She hadn't fallen back. Her position had been exactly where it needed to be for optimal communications coverage. Furthermore, Brennan continued, her weapons handling showed hesitation during the contact drills. She fired 17 rounds. Every other operator fired between 22 and 36. That hesitation gets people killed. Now several operators were frowning. Martinez opened his mouth to object, but Kowalski touched his arm, shaking his head slightly. Sir, Sarah said quietly, I fired precisely the number of rounds required to neutralize visible threats. No hesitation, just fire discipline. Are you contradicting my tactical assessment, Specialist? I'm providing my perspective, sir. Brennan's face flushed. Your perspective is irrelevant. What matters is that you demonstrated exactly what I've been saying. Smaller operators, less strength, less aggression, create tactical gaps. It's not personal, it's physics. Chief Ramirez stepped forward. Lieutenant, with all due respect, I was running that assault team.
Specialist Chen performed to standard in every measurable way.
Chief, I'm conducting this debrief. You'll have your turn. Brennan turned back to Sarah. I'm going to give you one more chance to prove you can operate under real pressure. We're going to run a hand-to-hand demonstration right now. Full contact, full intensity. You'll have 60 seconds to defend against a realistic assault. If you can't do it, you're off this evaluation and back to whatever administrative desk you came from. The assembled operators went silent. This wasn't normal. This wasn't professional. This was personal vendetta playing out in front of 40 witnesses. Master Chief Torres spoke up. Lieutenant Brennan, this is outside the scope of planned training activities. I'm directing you to, Master Chief, I'm the designated training officer for this exercise. I have authority to conduct evaluation drills as I see fit. Brennan's voice was tight with barely controlled fury.
Unless you're relieving me of command?
Torres and Brennan locked eyes. The political calculation was obvious. If Torres relieved Brennan now, it became about command authority rather than integration evaluation. It gave Brennan ammunition to claim the whole thing was rigged. Proceed, Torres said quietly. But this goes in my report. Duly noted. Brennan turned to the training mat that had been set up for post-exercise combatives cooldown. Specialist Chen, center mat. Sarah walked forward, her mind calculating options. She could refuse, cite safety concerns, appeal to Torres, but that looked like weakness. That gave Brennan exactly what he wanted, proof that when real pressure came, she folded. Or she could end this, right now, in front of everyone. She reached the center of the mat. Brennan faced her, rolling his shoulders. Standard drill. I attack, you defend. 60 seconds. If you can successfully defend and disengage, you pass. If I take you down and maintain control, you fail. Clear? Clear, sir. Outstanding. He cracked his knuckles. Begin. He came at her fast. No warm-up, no gradual escalation. A straight right hand aimed at her face. Sarah slipped it, created an angle, reset her position. Brennan adjusted, threw a combination, jab, cross, hook. She parried, evaded, kept her center line protected. Faster! Brennan snarled. His attacks intensified, the space between them closing. He shot for a takedown. Sarah sprawled, defended, pushed him away. They reset. The operators watching were quiet, tense. This had crossed the line from demonstration into something uglier. Brennan faked a jab, then dove for her legs in a double-leg tackle. Sarah's hips moved back, her hands fighting his grip, but his momentum was powerful. They went to the mat, Brennan scrambling for a dominant position.
Sarah's training took over. Not the basic combatives they taught at the academy, but the advanced ground fighting from DevGru, where every opponent was assumed to be trained, lethal, and completely committed. She created space, moved her hips, prevented him from establishing control.
"Stay still,"
Brennan grunted, trying to pin her arms. She didn't. She flowed, moved, made herself difficult to hold. They grappled for 15 seconds, neither gaining clear advantage. The watching operators leaned in, recognizing technical skill they hadn't expected from the quiet communications specialist. Brennan was breathing hard now, frustrated. He released one arm to try to strike her, and in that instant, Sarah created the space she needed. She pushed off, disengaged, came to her feet.
"Time!"
Someone called. Brennan stood, his face red, sweat dripping.
"We're not done."
"Sir, the time limit was 60 seconds, Chief Ramirez said.
"I said we're not done."
Brennan moved forward again. Sarah raised her hands, defensive but ready.
Sir, the drill parameters.
"I don't care about parameters. You think the enemy cares about time limits?"
He lunged forward, grabbed her wrist, twisted it hard enough to hurt. Sarah moved with the torque, reducing the leverage, but Brennan was fully committed now, abandoning all pretense of training discipline.
"You need to learn your place,"
he hissed, loud enough only for her to hear. And then he did it. His fist came up fast, a short, compact blow aimed at her jaw. Not a training strike, not a demonstration. A full-force punch driven by rage and humiliation and the desperate need to prove he was right. The crack of impact echoed across the training area. Sarah's head snapped to the side. Pain exploded through her jaw, bright and sharp. She tasted blood. The world went crystalline. Every operator watching sucked in breath simultaneously. Several started forward. Master Chief Torres was already moving. But Sarah was faster. Her body remembered. Not the basic training they taught support personnel, not the standard combatives they taught regular SEALs. The techniques came from another place entirely. From Damnek's classified training facility where DevGru operators refined their skills to lethal perfection. From instructors who taught her that in the darkest places, there was no second place, only survival. Brennan's follow-through left him extended, off balance. Sarah's right hand came up, not in a fist, but with fingers extended rigid. She struck the exact pressure point where his neck met his shoulder, brachial plexus origin, with surgical precision. His entire right arm went dead. Before the shock could register on his face, her left hand secured his wrist in a lock that used his own grip against him, rotating his compromised arm into a position that gave her total control. She stepped in, not away, used his forward momentum. Her hip became a fulcrum point. Physics took over. Brennan, 75 pounds heavier, went airborne. The controlled throw put him on his back on the mat with a sound like a body hitting pavement. Sarah flowed with him, maintaining wrist control, her other arm threading behind his head, establishing a rear-naked choke position before he could even process that he'd fallen. She didn't squeeze, didn't need to. Her forearm rested against his carotid artery with professional precision. Enough pressure to demonstrate total control, not enough to render him unconscious. The entire sequence took 1.8 seconds. Brennan lay on the mat, his eyes wide with shock and terror. His right arm still numb and useless, completely and utterly dominated by the woman he'd just punched. Sarah's face remained calm, professional, emotionless. She wasn't angry, she wasn't vindictive. She was simply a professional who'd executed a textbook response to an unprovoked assault. Master Chief Torres reached them.
Specialist Chen, release and stand by.
Sarah disengaged immediately, smoothly, rising to her feet in one fluid motion. She came to attention, blood still trickling from the corner of her mouth. Brennan scrambled up, his face cycling through emotions: shock, rage, humiliation, fear.
She assaulted me. You all saw it. She...
Lieutenant Brennan. Torres's voice could have frozen molten steel. Not one word. Brennan's mouth snapped shut. Torres looked at the assembled operators. Did anyone here see Specialist Chen initiate that engagement? 40 heads shook no. Did anyone see Lieutenant Brennan strike Specialist Chen in the face? 40 heads nodded yes. Outstanding. Torres turned to Commander Phillips. Sir, I'm formally requesting Lieutenant Brennan be relieved of his training duties pending investigation. Phillips's face was stone. Granted. Lieutenant Brennan, you're confined to quarters until further notice. Brennan looked around wildly, seeking support, finding none. Even his junior officer groupies were backing away.
This is political correctness gone insane.
Brennan's voice cracked.
I'm a decorated combat veteran. You're going to end my career over this political stunt?
Torres stepped closer. Lieutenant, you punched a subordinate in the face in front of 40 witnesses. That's assault. That's conduct unbecoming. That's career-ending. The only political stunt here is you thinking your rank gave you the right.
You don't understand. She's not what she claims. She's
what? Torres interrupted. Competent? Professional? Capable of defending herself when assaulted? Which of those qualities disqualifies her from service? Brennan had no answer. Torres pulled out his tactical tablet. Let me help you understand who you just punched, Lieutenant. His fingers moved across the screen. Petty Officer Chen's actual service record. The one with Tier 1 security clearance. He turned the screen toward the assembled operators.
Name: Chen Sarah. Rank: Lieutenant, junior grade. Unit designation: Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Silver Squadron.
The operators went dead silent. DEVGRU? Martinez whispered. Torres continued reading, his voice carrying across the training area. Basic Underwater Demolition / SEAL Training, Class 334. Graduated top 10%. Advanced Special Operations Training, Dam Neck Facility. Combat Deployments, Classified. Mission Set, Classified. Special Skills Qualifications. Advanced Close Quarters Combat Instructor. Tactical Communications Specialist. Fluent Mandarin and Arabic. He looked up. Awards and decorations. Bronze Star with Valor for action under fire in classified theater. Purple Heart. Navy Commendation Medal with Combat V. And most recently, recommended for Silver Star for actions during a classified hostage rescue operation where she personally extracted 2 wounded teammates while under sustained enemy fire. Every operator was staring at Sarah now, seeing her completely differently. Torres turned to Brennan. You didn't punch a communications specialist, Lieutenant. You punched a SEAL officer, a DevGRU operator, someone who's earned everything you claim women can't achieve. And she defended herself with approximately 5% of the force she's actually capable of, because unlike you, she maintained professional discipline, even when assaulted. Brennan's face had gone from red to white. Torres executed a sharp, formal salute. Lieutenant Chen, my sincere apologies for the unprofessional conduct you've endured. Thank you for your demonstration of restraint and professionalism. Sarah returned the salute, her face still calm, still professional. Master Chief? The assembled SEAL operators, 40 men who'd spent 2 days watching her be dismissed and mocked and nearly injured, came to attention as one. Not a single voice was raised. Not a single gesture was made. They simply stood at perfect attention, a silent acknowledgement that they'd been wrong. that they'd witnessed something profound, that the quiet professional in their midst had proven every assumption false. Chief Ramirez broke the silence. "Lieutenant Chen, permission to speak?" "Go ahead, Chief." "On behalf of my team, and I think I speak for every operator here, we were wrong. We should have spoken up sooner. We should have defended you. We failed you, and we failed the standards we claim to uphold. That won't happen again. You have our respect and our apologies." Martinez stepped forward. "Ma'am, everything he said. And thank you for not, actually destroying Lieutenant Brennan, because you totally could have." Sarah allowed herself the smallest smile. "The goal isn't destruction, Petty Officer. It's understanding." She looked at Brennan, who stood isolated now, his career in ruins, his worldview shattered. "Lieutenant Brennan, you were right about one thing," she said quietly. "Standards matter. They're the foundation of everything we do. Where you were wrong is thinking standards had anything to do with gender. Standards are about capability, competence, and character. I've met those standards. So have thousands of other women in uniform. And we'll keep meeting them, regardless of how many people like you stand in our way." Brennan said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Master Chief Torres gestured to two senior chiefs. "Escort Lieutenant Brennan to quarters. Commander Phillips, I'll have my full report within 2 hours." As Brennan was led away, the operators began to disperse, their conversations hushed and intense. The world had shifted on its axis. Everything they'd assumed about integration, about standards, about who belonged in the teams, had been challenged and found wanting. Sarah touched her jaw, felt the swelling beginning. It would bruise. Torres approached with a first aid kit. "You need medical?" "I'm fine, Master Chief." "You're not fine. You were assaulted by a superior officer." Torres's voice softened slightly. "But you handled it exactly right. You gave us truth. Undeniable, witnessed, documented truth. That's what we needed." "What happens now?" "Now?" Torres smiled grimly. "Now we change the culture. One mind at a time. Starting with 40 SEAL operators who just had their assumptions destroyed by a 5'4" DevGru operator who showed them what quiet professionalism actually looks like." Sarah looked across the training area where clusters of operators were talking, gesturing, processing. The real work was just beginning. The medical corpsman finished examining Sarah's jaw 20 minutes later in the base clinic. His hands were gentle but professional, probing the swelling, checking for fractures. "You're lucky. No break, just deep tissue bruising. You'll have a hell of a shiner for about a week." He handed her an ice pack. "You want pain meds?" "No, thanks." "Tough it out, huh?" The corpsman smiled slightly. "Figures. Half the base is talking about what happened. They're saying you took down Brennan in under 2 seconds. 1.8 seconds, Sarah corrected, then caught herself. "Sorry, that sounded..." "Like someone who's trained to measure combat effectiveness in fractions of seconds?" The corpsman's smile widened. "Ma'am, I've been patching up SEALs for 12 years. I know the difference between someone who got lucky and someone who's done this 1,000 times. That lieutenant never stood a chance." Sarah pressed the ice pack against her jaw. "He had every chance. He just made bad choices." "Yeah, well, those bad choices are about to end his career." The corpsman began packing up his medical kit. "You need anything else, you come find me. And for what it's worth, my sister's a Marine. She deals with guys like Brennan every day." "What you did today, standing up, not backing down, that matters to people like her." After he left, Sarah sat alone in the examination room, the cold compress numbing her face but doing nothing for the storm of emotions underneath. She'd maintained perfect composure during the confrontation, during the revelation, during the formal apologies.
But now, in the quiet, everything hit at once. The door opened. Master Chief Torres entered, followed by Commander Phillips.
Lieutenant Chen, Phillips said, his voice formal. I need to ask you some questions for the official investigation. You comfortable talking now, or would you prefer legal counsel present? I'm comfortable, sir. Phillips set a digital recorder on the examination table. This is being recorded. Please state your name and rank for the record. Lieutenant Junior Grade Sarah Chen, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Silver Squadron.
Describe in your own words the events leading up to Lieutenant Brennan's physical assault on you. Sarah walked them through everything. The initial briefing, the mat demonstration, Brennan's escalating aggression, the 60-second drill that exceeded parameters, and finally, the punch. She kept her voice steady, factual, professional. At what point did you feel physically threatened? Phillips asked.
When Lieutenant Brennan deviated from stated drill parameters and struck me with full force. That was assault, not training.
Your response was immediate and highly effective. Where did you learn those specific techniques?
DEVGRU Advanced Close Quarters Combat Course, Dam Neck Facility. The response was proportional defensive action designed to neutralize the threat and establish control without causing permanent injury.
Phillips nodded. You could have seriously injured Lieutenant Brennan, potentially killed him with those techniques. Why didn't you?
Sarah met his eyes.
Because the goal wasn't punishment, sir. It was stopping the assault and protecting myself. Once I established control, further force was unnecessary and would have been inappropriate. Even though he'd been systematically harassing and belittling you for 2 days.
Even then.
Phillips exchanged a glance with Torres. Lieutenant Chen, you're aware that you have grounds to press formal charges against Lieutenant Brennan. Assault, conduct unbecoming, violation of training safety protocols, gender-based discrimination, abuse of authority. We have 40 witnesses. The case is airtight.
Yes, sir.
Do you wish to press charges?
Sarah was quiet for a moment. This was the crossroads.
She could destroy Brennan completely, make an example of him, extract justice for every woman who'd ever been dismissed or mocked or assaulted by men who thought rank gave them impunity.
What happens if I don't press charges? She asked. He still faces administrative action, Torres said.
Relieved of training duties immediately. Formal reprimand in his service jacket. Probably forced resignation within 90 days. His career is effectively over either way. And if I do press charges?
Court-martial, Phillips said. Public trial, national media attention. You become the face of integration, whether you want that or not. Every talk show, every newspaper, every politician with an opinion about women in combat will use your story as ammunition.
Sarah closed her eyes. She'd joined the SEALs to serve, not to be a symbol. She'd proven herself in the dark places where the work actually mattered, where bullets didn't care about your gender and enemies didn't pause to debate policy.
I don't want to press charges, she said quietly.
Torres frowned.
Lieutenant, you have every right. I know my rights, Master Chief. But a court-martial makes this about me and him. It becomes a spectacle. What I want is for this to be about the system that enabled him.
She looked at Phillips.
Sir, instead of charges against Brennan, I want mandatory bias training for all Special Operations training cadre. I want anonymous feedback systems for students to report harassment. I want oversight on training environments so this never happens to anyone else.
Phillips studied her face. You're willing to let him walk away?
He's not walking away. His career is over. His reputation is destroyed. And 40 SEAL operators just learned a lesson they'll never forget. That's not nothing.
Sarah's voice strengthened.
But one man's punishment doesn't fix the culture. I want systemic change. I want the next woman who goes through integration to be judged on her performance, not her plumbing. That matters more than my personal satisfaction." Torres smiled slightly. "You sound like a leader, Lieutenant." "I sound like someone who's tired, Master Chief." "Fair enough." Phillips shut off the recorder. "I'll forward your recommendations to Admiral Carson.
Between your request and my report, we'll push for the institutional changes. Brennan will receive his administrative punishment, and Lieutenant Chen, thank you for your service and your restraint." After Phillips left, Torres sat down beside her. "You know you don't have to be the bigger person every time, right?" he said quietly. "Yes, Master Chief. You could burn Brennan to the ground and no one would blame you." "I know. But you won't, because you're thinking 10 moves ahead. You're thinking about the next female SEAL candidate, the one after her, the institutional legacy." Torres shook his head. "That's officer thinking, strategic thinking. It's also the loneliest kind of thinking." Sarah lowered the ice pack. "Can I ask you something, Master Chief? Off the record?" "Shoot." "Did you know I'd have to defend myself physically? Is that why you let Brennan push this far?" Torres was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, I hoped it wouldn't come to that. I hoped Brennan would be professional, that the other operators would step in, that the evaluation could happen without violence. But did I know it might happen? Yeah, I knew. And you let it play out anyway." "I let it play out because 40 SEAL operators needed to see proof. Not studies, not statistics, not politically correct briefings. They needed to see with their own eyes that a female operator could meet the standard and defend herself when challenged." Torres met her gaze. "I'm sorry that burden fell on you. But you carried it. And now those 40 men will carry that lesson to their platoons, their teams, their careers. You changed minds today, Lieutenant. That was the mission." "Funny mission," Sarah said. "Get punched in the face to change institutional culture. The military's built on people taking hits, so the next generation doesn't have to. You just did that for every woman who comes after you." "What if I'm tired of being the example, Master Chief? What if I just want to do my job?" Torres stood. "Then you go back to DevCrew, you run your missions, and you let the institutional machinery do its thing. But first, you've got 40 operators outside who want to talk to you. They deserve that conversation." Sarah sighed. "Can I have 5 minutes to look less like I lost a bar fight?" "You've got 10. But, Lieutenant, you didn't lose anything. Remember that." The operators were gathered in the briefing room when Sarah entered, her jaw sporting fresh purple bruising despite the ice. The room went silent. 40 pairs of eyes tracked her movement to the front of the room. Chief Ramirez stood. "Lieutenant Chen, we asked Master Chief Torres if we could speak with you before you leave Fort Bragg. If you're not comfortable..." "I'm comfortable, Chief. What's on your mind?" Ramirez glanced at his fellow operators, then back at her. "Ma'am, we've been talking." "What happened today? What we witnessed? What we learned about who you really are? It's forced us to confront some hard truths about ourselves." Martinez stood next. "I made assumptions about you from day one. I thought I was being helpful, being protective, but really I was being condescending. I'm sorry." One by one, operators stood and spoke. "I laughed when Brennan mocked you in the briefing. I should have shut him down. I didn't defend you on the mat because I was afraid of looking soft. That was cowardice. I assumed you got your qualification through lowered standards. That was prejudice, plain and simple." Senior Chief Kowalski, the quiet veteran who'd advised Sarah to stay in her lane, stood last. His voice was rough with emotion. "I've been a SEAL for 22 years, served with the best operators in the world. Today I watched someone I dismissed as a liability execute techniques I couldn't pull off on my best day.
That humbled me. More than that, it shamed me.
He paused. You had every right to hurt Brennan badly. You had the skill. You had the justification. But you showed restraint, discipline, and professionalism that most of us couldn't match. You're a better operator than I am, ma'am, and I'm sorry it took seeing you defend yourself for me to realize that. The room was silent. Sarah felt the weight of their words, their genuine contrition. These were good men who'd made bad assumptions. The question was whether they'd carry this lesson forward or forget it when the next evaluation came.
Can I be honest with you all?
She asked. Nods all around.
I didn't want this assignment. Master Chief Torres asked me to come here for an evaluation, and I said no 3 times. I didn't want to be the test case, the example, the symbol. I wanted to do my job with my team where I'd already proven myself.
She paused. But I came anyway, because I remembered what it was like going through BUD/S, knowing that half the instructors thought I didn't belong, that every mistake would be used as evidence that women couldn't hack it. I didn't want the next female candidate to face that alone. Martinez spoke up. For what it's worth, ma'am, you proved more than capability. You proved character. Brennan tried everything to break you: humiliation, isolation, physical assault, and you never lost your professionalism. That's not about gender. That's about being a warrior. I appreciate that, but here's what I need you all to understand. Sarah's voice firmed. I'm not exceptional. I'm trained. There's a difference. Every technique I used today, every response, every decision, that came from the same training pipeline available to anyone who meets the standard. The SEAL community has this mystique about operators being superhuman, but we're not. We're just people who've trained harder and longer than most.
Ramirez leaned forward. Are you saying other women could do what you did?
I'm saying other women already are. They're serving in combat roles across every branch. They're in special forces, rangers, Marine raiders. They're kicking in doors and calling in airstrikes and saving lives. The only difference is visibility and access. You all witnessed my capabilities today because circumstances forced it. How many other qualified women has the community overlooked because they never got that same moment of proof? Silence answered her question. So here's what I'm asking, Sarah continued. Don't make this about me being special. Make this about examining your own assumptions. When the next female candidate shows up, and they will show up, judge them on performance. Give them the same hard training you'd give any candidate, but give them an honest shot. Don't set them up to fail to validate your preconceptions. The standards don't change. They shouldn't change, but access to meeting those standards should be equal. An older SEAL in the back, a Master Chief with gray in his beard, spoke up. What if someone can't meet the standard? Do we just pretend they did for political reasons?
No, Sarah said firmly. If someone can't meet the standard, they don't pass. Gender doesn't matter. But failure has to be about actual performance, not artificial barriers. Lieutenant Brennan spent 2 days trying to prove I couldn't hack it, and when I met every challenge, he resorted to assault. That's not maintaining standards. That's protecting ego.
The gray-bearded Master Chief nodded slowly. Fair point. Lieutenant, Martinez said, what happens now? You going back to your team?
That's the plan.
Can I ask what you did to earn that Bronze Star? The one with valor? Sarah hesitated. The operation was still classified, the details sanitized from any public record. But these were cleared operators who'd earned the right to know.
Hostage rescue in Syria. High-value American contractor held by ISIS affiliate. Our intelligence was bad. Instead of 4 hostiles, we hit a compound with 14. Firefight went wrong. 2 of my teammates went down in the first 30 seconds. I dragged them both to cover while calling in close air support, then held the position for 8 minutes until the QRF arrived. That's it. No heroics. Just training and stubbornness. That's not just anything, ma'am, Kowalski said quietly. That's combat effectiveness under the worst possible circumstances. It's what any operator would have done. Exactly, Ramirez said. That's the point. You did what any of us would have done, because you're one of us. Took us too long to see that, but we see it now. The door opened. Master Chief Torres stepped in with Commander Phillips. Lieutenant Chen, if you're finished here, Admiral Carson is on video conference. He'd like to speak with you. Sarah turned back to the operators. Thank you all for the conversation. It took courage to admit you were wrong. That's the mark of professionals. Ma'am, Martinez called out as she headed for the door. When you tell your teammates back at Dam Neck about this, about Fort Bragg, tell them not everyone here was like Brennan. Tell them some of us learned something important. Sarah smiled. I'll tell them exactly that. The video conference was brief and direct. Admiral Carson, a 3-star with 35 years of service, appeared on the screen wearing his dress whites. Lieutenant Chen, I've read Master Chief Torres's preliminary report and Commander Phillips's investigation summary. Before we discuss Lieutenant Brennan's fate, I want your assessment. In your professional opinion, is the SEAL community ready for full integration? Sarah chose her words carefully. Sir, the community is ready if leadership makes clear that integration is happening regardless of individual opinions. What I witnessed at Fort Bragg was what happens when bias is allowed to operate unchecked. Most of the operators there were good men who made bad assumptions because no one ever challenged those assumptions. And Lieutenant Brennan? Lieutenant Brennan represents a vocal minority who will never accept integration. But he also represents a warning, sir. If we don't address the cultural resistance proactively, men like him will sabotage the program through 1,000 small cruelties that never quite rise to actionable offenses. Carson nodded. I'm implementing your recommendations. Mandatory bias training for all training cadre, anonymous feedback systems, external oversight on integration exercises. Additionally, Lieutenant Brennan will be offered the opportunity to resign his commission. If he refuses, he'll face an administrative separation board. Sir, if I may, what about the other women who've reported issues with Lieutenant Brennan? The notes in his file? Carson's face hardened. We failed them. We saw the pattern and didn't act decisively. That changes now. I'm directing a comprehensive review of all training commands for similar patterns. Any instructor with multiple complaints will face immediate investigation. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, Lieutenant. Thank you. You took a hit, literally, to expose a systemic problem. That took courage. Carson paused. I'm also authorizing a commendation for your performance during this evaluation. Your professionalism under extreme circumstances exemplifies the SEAL ethos. With respect, sir, I'd prefer no commendation. This shouldn't be about rewarding me for defending myself. It should be about fixing the system. Carson studied her through the screen. You're thinking strategically. That's good. But the community needs to know that women who meet our standards will be recognized the same way men are. The commendation stands. Dismissed, Lieutenant. Get back to your team. The screen went dark. Torres waited outside the conference room. How'd it go? He's implementing the changes. Brennan's out. Good. You ready to head back to Dam Neck? More than ready, Master Chief. Before you go, one more thing. Torres handed her a folded piece of paper. Chief Ramirez asked me to give you this. Sarah unfolded it. Inside was a simple message. Slot open on my assault team if you ever want to transfer. We could use an operator with your skills. Fair winds. Ramirez. Below it, 40 signatures.
Every operator who'd witnessed the confrontation had signed.
They mean it, Torres said. After today, you could have your pick of teams.
Sarah folded the paper carefully, tucking it into her pocket.
I already have a team, Master Chief. Best operators I've ever worked with.
They a damn neck wondering where you've been? They know I'm on temporary assignment. They don't know details.
Torres smiled.
They're going to lose their minds when you tell them you spent 3 days getting hazed by a conventional lieutenant before dropping him on his ass in front of 40 witnesses. I wasn't planning to tell them. Lieutenant, your jaw looks like you went 10 rounds with a heavyweight. Your team's going to notice.
Sarah touched the bruise gingerly.
I'll tell them I walked into a door.
A door named Marcus Brennan. Despite everything, Sarah laughed. It hurt her jaw, but it felt good. 2 days later, Sarah stood in the parking lot at Fort Bragg, her gear packed, her official evaluation complete. A Navy sedan waited to drive her to the airfield. Martinez jogged over, slightly out of breath.
Ma'am, wanted to catch you before you left. My sister, the one who wants to fly jets? I called her last night, told her about what happened here. She asked me to tell you something.
What's that?
She said to tell you that women like you are the reason women like her believe they can make it. She said every time she doubts herself, she's going to remember that a SEAL lieutenant took a punch and turned it into a lesson 40 men will never forget.
Sarah felt unexpected emotion tighten her throat.
Tell your sister the standards are high, but they're achievable. Tell her to trust her training and ignore the noise.
I will, ma'am. And hey, if you're ever back at Bragg for cross-training or whatever, drinks are on me.
I'll hold you to that, Martinez.
She climbed into the sedan. As they pulled away from Fort Bragg, Sarah watched the training facilities disappear in the rearview mirror. Somewhere in that base, Lieutenant Brennan was packing his own belongings, his career in ruins, his certainty shattered. Somewhere, 40 SEAL operators were processing the lesson they'd learned.
Somewhere, the first small ripples of cultural change were beginning to spread. The evaluation was complete. The truth was documented. The system was beginning to shift. Sarah pulled out her phone and sent a text to her Silver Squadron team leader. Wrapping up TDY, back tomorrow. Ready for real work.
The response came immediately. About damn time. We've got a mission brief Tuesday, classified theater. You in?
Sarah smiled despite her bruised jaw. Always. Because that's what she was. Not a symbol, not an example, not a case study in integration politics. Just an operator heading back to her team to do the work that mattered in the places where the world never saw and the standards never changed, and the only thing that mattered was whether you could do the job. She'd proven she could. Now she was going home. 6 months later, the story had traveled farther than Sarah ever imagined it would. She learned about it from her teammate, a grizzled senior chief named Dawson, who'd been running operations with DevGru since before Sarah was born. They were prepping for a mission in the Silver Squadron ready room when he tossed a newspaper article onto the table.
You see this?
Dawson asked. Sarah glanced at the headline. Navy implements sweeping changes to special operations training following assault investigation. I saw it, she said, checking her rifle's optics. Article mentions an incident at Fort Bragg involving a female SEAL officer. That wouldn't be you, would it?
Couldn't say, Senior Chief. Classified evaluation.
Dawson grinned.
Right, classified. Except half the SEAL community knows about the lieutenant who got his ass handed to him by a communications specialist who turned out to be DevGru.
Sarah's team leader, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, looked up from his tactical planning.
Leave it alone, Dawson. Chen's back where she belongs.
That's what matters. But Dawson wasn't finished. You know what the rumor mill says? They say you took down this lieutenant in under 2 seconds, using techniques most operators couldn't execute on their best day. They say 40 SEALs watched it happen, and it changed how they think about integration.
Rumors are usually bullshit, Sarah said. Usually. Dawson studied her face. But that bruise you showed up with 6 months ago? That wasn't bullshit. And the way you've been even quieter than usual since you got back? That's not bullshit either. Webb cut in. Dawson, we've got mission brief in 20 minutes. Focus. Copy that, sir. But Dawson caught Sarah's eye. For what it's worth, whatever happened at Bragg, you handled it right. The changes they're implementing, the oversight, the bias training, the feedback systems, that stuff matters. You did good work, Chen. Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The truth was, she hadn't processed Fort Bragg yet.
She'd come back to Dam Neck, thrown herself into training and operations, and tried to pretend those 3 days hadn't happened. But the bruise had faded slower than she'd wanted, and every time one of her teammates asked about it, she'd felt the weight of everything she couldn't say. The mission that night went perfectly. They hit a compound in an undisclosed location, extracted a high-value target, and were wheels up within 12 minutes. Sarah ran communications, coordinating air assets and ground elements with the precision that made her invaluable to the team. When they landed back at base, Webb pulled her aside. "You good?" he asked. "Always, sir." "That's not what I asked. You've been running at about 90% since you got back from wherever Torres sent you. I need my comms specialist at 100. Sarah met his eyes. Webb was one of the few people in the world who knew exactly where she'd been and why.
I watched good men make bad assumptions, she said quietly. I watched them defend those assumptions, even when confronted with evidence. And then I watched one man turn violent because his ego couldn't handle being wrong. That's hard to process, sir.
Did you handle it professionally?
Yes, sir.
Did you maintain discipline under pressure?
Yes, sir.
Then stop carrying it like a failure. You went into a hostile environment, completed your mission, and came back with the intelligence we needed. That's success, Lieutenant. Learn from it and move forward. 3 weeks later, Sarah got an unexpected email. The sender was listed as S. Martinez, USN. She opened it. Lieutenant Chen, hope this finds you well. Wanted to give you an update on what's happening at Bragg. You remember that conversation we had before you left about my sister wanting to fly jets? She just got accepted to the Naval Academy. When she got the news, first person she called was me. Second thing she said, after screaming about the acceptance, was, "Tell that SEAL lieutenant thank you." Also wanted to let you know Chief Ramirez got promoted to Senior Chief. His first act was implementing a new training protocol based on what happened with you. He calls it assumption checks. Basically, before any training exercise starts, instructors have to state their evaluation criteria publicly and stick to them. No moving goalposts, no subjective nonsense. It's making a difference. The lieutenant, you know who I mean, resigned his commission. Last I heard, he took a contractor job somewhere overseas. Nobody here misses him. Anyway, just thought you should know the ripples are still spreading. Fair winds and following seas. Martinez. Sarah read the email 3 times before responding with a simple, "Congratulations to your sister. Tell her the standards are high, but achievable. Chen." 4 months after that, Master Chief Torres requested a video conference. When his face appeared on her screen, he looked older but satisfied. "Lieutenant Chen, got a minute?" "For you, Master Chief, always." "I'm retiring next month. 30 years in the Navy. Figured it's time to spend some time with grandkids before they forget what I look like." Torres paused. "Before I do, wanted to update you on the Fort Bragg evaluation." Sarah leaned forward. "I'm listening." "The institutional changes are taking hold. We've processed 47 complaints through the new anonymous feedback system.
12 training instructors are under investigation. 3 have been relieved. The culture's shifting, Chen. Slowly, but it's happening. That's good news, Master Chief. It is. But there's something else. Torres's expression grew serious. Remember those 40 operators who witnessed what happened? They've been talking, not gossiping, teaching. Every one of them has brought the lessons from that day into their training responsibilities.
Ramirez is running integration seminars. Kowalski rewrote his combatives curriculum to emphasize leverage over strength. Martinez is mentoring 3 female SEAL candidates. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest.
They're paying it forward.
More than that, they're becoming advocates, because they saw with their own eyes that their assumptions were wrong, and they had the integrity to admit it. Torres smiled. You know what the real victory was, Lieutenant? Not you taking down Brennan. It was 40 men choosing growth over ego. That's cultural change that'll last decades. What about the women who reported issues with Brennan before me? The ones whose complaints got buried? Admiral Carson personally contacted each of them, apologized on behalf of the institution, offered them opportunities to continue their service if they chose. 3 took him up on it. They're in the pipeline now, getting the fair evaluation they should have gotten years ago. Sarah's throat tightened. That matters, Master Chief. That really matters. It does. And it happened because you were willing to be the example. That took courage, Chen. The kind that doesn't get medals because it's too classified to acknowledge. But I'm acknowledging it now. You changed the trajectory of integration in naval special warfare. That's your legacy. After the call ended, Sarah sat in silence. Legacy. She'd never wanted to be a symbol or a case study. She'd just wanted to do her job. But Torres was right. By enduring Fort Bragg, by maintaining discipline when Brennan lost his, by choosing systemic change over personal revenge, she'd created something bigger than herself. 2 years after Fort Bragg, Sarah was promoted to full lieutenant and given command of her own Silver Squadron assault team. The day she took command, her team gathered for the traditional welcome briefing. I know some of you have heard stories about me, Sarah began. Some of them are probably true. Most are exaggerated. Here's what you need to know. I expect professionalism. I expect competence. And I expect you to judge each other on performance. Not gender, not background, not anything except whether you can do the job. One of her new team members, a young petty officer fresh from BUD/S, raised his hand. Ma'am, is it true you took down a lieutenant at Fort Bragg in under 2 seconds? The rest of the team groaned. Sarah smiled. It was 1.8 seconds, and he hit me first, so it was self-defense. Did it hurt? The petty officer asked. His punch? Yeah. It bruised my jaw for a week. No, ma'am, I meant, did it hurt having to prove yourself like that? Having everyone doubt you until you had to physically defend yourself? The question surprised her with its insight. Sarah considered her answer carefully. It hurt. But you know what hurt more? Watching good operators make assumptions that limited their own effectiveness. Watching a decorated officer destroy his career because he couldn't accept that his worldview was wrong. That hurt, because it was wasteful. We can't afford to waste talent or potential based on bias. The threats we face don't care about our internal politics. The petty officer nodded. Understood, ma'am. Good. Now let's talk about next week's operation. We've got a high-value target in Syria. Complex approach, tight timeline. I need everyone at 100%. Questions? Her team leaned in, ready to work, ready to trust. Because she'd earned it the same way every leader earned it, through competence, consistency, and character.
5 years after Fort Bragg, Sarah attended a change of command ceremony at Coronado. The outgoing commander was Senior Chief Ramirez, now promoted to Master Chief and moving to a fleet leadership position. The incoming commander was the first woman to lead a SEAL training command. During the reception afterward, Ramirez found Sarah.
"Lieutenant Commander Chen," he said formally, then grinned. "Look at us. Both got promoted since that mess at Bragg."
"Congratulations on Master Chief. Well deserved."
"Thanks. Listen, I wanted to tell you something." Ramirez lowered his voice. "You remember that day on the mat, when Brennan lost it and hit you?"
"I remember."
"I should have stepped in sooner. Should have shut him down before it got to that point. That failure, that moment when I chose silence over action, it's haunted me for 5 years."
"Chief, Master Chief, you couldn't have known he'd actually strike me."
But I knew he was wrong. I knew he was abusing his authority, and I stayed quiet because it was easier than confronting a superior officer. Ramirez met her eyes. "I've spent 5 years making sure I never make that mistake again. When I see bias, I call it out. When I see harassment, I shut it down. When I see someone being treated unfairly, I intervene."
"Because I learned from you that silence in the face of wrong is complicity." Sarah touched his arm. "Then something good came from it."
"Something great came from it. The woman taking command here? She's one of the SEAL candidates Martinez mentored. She went through BUD/S 2 years ago and graduated top of her class. When she got her trident, she told me the only reason she had the courage to try was because she'd heard about a SEAL lieutenant who proved women belonged in the teams. She meant you, Chen."
"I just did my job, Master Chief."
"No. You did everyone's job better than they were doing it, while taking abuse most of us couldn't handle. And you did it with grace. That's not just doing your job. That's leadership." 8 years after Fort Bragg, Master Chief Torres passed away from cancer. Sarah flew to Virginia for the funeral. The service was packed with operators from every SEAL team, representatives from every special operations unit, and enough brass to fill a battleship. During the reception, an older woman approached Sarah. She was elegant, in her 70s, wearing a simple black dress.
"Lieutenant Commander Chen, I'm Catherine Torres, Raymond's widow." "Mrs. Torres, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your husband was an extraordinary man. He spoke about you often, you know. The evaluation at Fort Bragg, he said it was one of his proudest accomplishments because you showed such courage and integrity under impossible circumstances."
Sarah felt tears threaten.
"He gave me the mission. I just executed it. He gave you an impossible mission, and you somehow made it possible."
Catherine reached into her purse and pulled out a folded letter.
"Raymond asked me to give you this when the time was right. I think today's the right time."
Sarah unfolded the letter. Torres's handwriting was precise, military sharp. "Lieutenant Commander Chen, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. That's okay. I've had a good run, and I'm ready for the next deployment, wherever that takes me. I wanted you to know something I never told you face to face, because we military types aren't great with emotions. What you did at Fort Bragg changed more than SEAL integration policy. It changed me. I'd been in the teams 30 years when you came to Bragg. I'd seen plenty of bias, plenty of harassment, plenty of good people driven out by toxic leadership. I'd filed reports, made recommendations, tried to work within the system. But I'd also stayed silent more times than I care to admit, because the fight seemed too hard, or the politics too complicated. Watching you maintain discipline when Brennan assaulted you, watching you choose systemic change over personal revenge,
That taught me what real courage looks like. It's not the absence of anger or pain.
It's the choice to transform that anger and pain into something constructive. Because of you, I spent my last years in service fighting harder for the next generation. Because of you, I stopped accepting incremental change and demanded transformation. Because of you, I remembered why I put on this uniform in the first place. You made me a better Master Chief, Chen. You made me a better man. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for showing an old sailor that character matters more than comfort. Fair winds and following seas. Master Chief Raymond Torres. Sarah folded the letter carefully, tears streaming down her face. Catherine Torres handed her a tissue. He meant every word, Catherine said. Raymond died believing the teams would be stronger, better, more effective because of leaders like you. That brought him peace. He deserved better than Fort Bragg, Sarah said. He deserved to see integration succeed without fighting so hard for it. Maybe. But fighting for the right things, that's what gave his life meaning. You gave him that fight, and you fought alongside him. That's not a small thing, Commander. 10 years after Fort Bragg, Sarah was promoted to Commander and assigned to Naval Special Warfare Command Headquarters. Her first day, she walked past a training facility where a class of SEAL candidates was running combatives drills. She stopped to watch. The instructors were running the candidates through defensive techniques, emphasizing leverage and timing over brute strength. The candidates were mixed gender, 8 men and 2 women, and the instructors treated them identically, pushing everyone to their limits, correcting technique without bias. One of the female candidates executed a perfect hip throw on a male opponent twice her size. The instructor nodded approval. Clean execution, Petty Officer Williams. That's how it's done. Size matters less than timing. Everyone see that? Run it again. Sarah watched for 5 more minutes, a small smile on her face. This was normal now. Not remarkable, not controversial, just professional training for professional warriors. As she turned to leave, the senior instructor called out, "Commander on deck!" The candidates and instructors came to attention. Sarah waved them back to work. As you were, keep training. The senior instructor jogged over. It was Kowalski, now a Master Chief and head combatives instructor. Commander Chen! Didn't expect to see you here. Just observing, Master Chief. Your students look sharp. They're good kids, hungry to learn, willing to work. Kowalski paused. You know, I use you as an example in every class I teach. Me? Not by name, operational security and all that. But I tell them about an operator who defended herself against an assault using perfect technique and controlled aggression. I tell them that moment taught me leverage beats strength every single time. It's become part of the curriculum. Sarah watched the candidates continuing their drills. The system's changed, hasn't it? It has. Not perfect yet. Probably never will be perfect. But it's better. Way better than 10 years ago. Kowalski's voice softened. You know what I regret most about Fort Bragg? That I didn't defend you when Brennan was being a bastard. I stood there and watched him abuse his authority, and I told myself it wasn't my business. That shame's driven me to be better every day since. You've more than made up for it, Master Chief. Maybe. But I'll never forget the lesson. Silence in the face of wrong is choosing the wrong side. You taught me that. 15 years after Fort Bragg, Sarah was promoted to captain and given command of Naval Special Warfare Group 2. She was the first woman to command a SEAL group, and the promotion made national news. The day of her change of command ceremony, a young woman in navy dress blues approached her. Captain Chen, I'm Lieutenant Anna Martinez. My uncle served with you at Fort Bragg. Sarah smiled.
Let me guess. Petty Officer Martinez? He's Senior Chief Martinez now. He couldn't be here today, but he sent me to deliver a message. What's the message? He said to tell you his sister, my mother, made captain last year. She's a Navy pilot. And he said the only reason she had the courage to pursue her dreams was because when she was 18 years old and doubting herself, her brother told her about a SEAL who proved that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing the job anyway. Sarah felt the emotion rise in her throat. Your mother made captain? Yes, ma'am. She credits you with inspiring her to push through when the academy got hard, when flight training got brutal, when people told her women couldn't handle the pressure. She wanted me to tell you that your example rippled farther than you'll ever know.
That night, Sarah stood alone on the balcony of the BOQ, looking out over Coronado. Somewhere in the darkness, new SEAL candidates were suffering through Hell Week. Some would make it, some wouldn't. But they'd all be judged on the same standard, given the same opportunities, treated with the same professional respect. Because 15 years ago, 40 operators watched a decorated lieutenant assault a subordinate and saw that subordinate respond with disciplined precision that ended a career and began a cultural revolution. Because Master Chief Torres believed institutional change was worth the risk. Because Sarah Chen had chosen to endure 3 days of humiliation and ultimately violence rather than walk away. The ripples spread farther than she'd ever imagined. They spread into other service branches, other special operations units, other leadership pipelines. They spread into congressional hearings and policy decisions and military academies. They spread into the hearts and minds of young women who needed to know that the path was possible, even if it wasn't easy. Sarah pulled out her phone and typed a message to the email address Martinez had included. Tell your mother congratulations on making captain. Tell her I'm proud of her. And tell your uncle that the courage he showed by apologizing, by admitting he was wrong and choosing to be better, that's the kind of leadership the teams need. Thank you for the message. The response came back 30 minutes later. My uncle says to tell you, the mat at Fort Bragg still has a star marked where Brennan went down. They call it the Chen Star now. Every new candidate gets told the story. Fair winds, Captain. Anna. Sarah smiled through tears. 20 years after Fort Bragg, Sarah retired as a Rear Admiral. Her career had taken her to the highest levels of special operations leadership. She'd commanded in combat, shaped policy, and mentored 2 generations of operators. At her retirement ceremony, the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Command spoke about her legacy. He talked about her combat valor, her strategic thinking, her mentorship. But he ended with Fort Bragg. 20 years ago, then Lieutenant Chen faced a choice. She could walk away from an evaluation that was clearly rigged against her. She could respond to assault with overwhelming force. She could press charges and destroy one man's career while becoming a national symbol for integration politics. Instead, she chose a harder path. She chose to endure, to demonstrate, and ultimately to transform. Because of that choice, because of her courage and her discipline and her vision, the SEAL teams are stronger today. We're more effective, more diverse, more aligned with our core values. Admiral Chen didn't just open doors. She proved why those doors should never have been closed. Fair winds and following seas, Admiral. In the audience, now elderly Martinez sat with his sister, the Navy captain who'd made her own history as one of the first female pilots to command a carrier air wing. Beside them sat 3 women in SEAL tridents, operators who'd followed the path Sarah had cleared. After the ceremony, a young sailor approached Sarah. She was maybe 19, wearing brand new enlisted dress blues, her eyes wide with admiration. Ma'am, I just wanted to say thank you.
I start BUD/S next month, and I'm terrified. But my recruiter told me about what you did, about how you proved women belonged. It gave me courage.
Sarah looked at this young woman on the edge of her own journey and saw herself 20 years earlier, uncertain but determined, afraid but unwilling to quit.
The standards are high, Sarah said. Higher than most people can meet, but they're achievable. Don't expect special treatment. Don't ask for lowered standards.
Just do the work, trust your training, and remember that the only person who can disqualify you is yourself. Can you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Then go prove it. And when someone tells you that you don't belong, let your performance speak louder than their prejudice.
The young sailor saluted.
I will, ma'am. Thank you.
As Sarah walked away from her retirement ceremony, she thought about Lieutenant Marcus Brennan. She'd heard through unofficial channels that he'd spent the years after Fort Bragg working security contracts overseas, never quite finding his place again after the Navy. Part of her felt pity for a man who'd destroyed his own career through ego and bias. But mostly, she felt grateful. Because Brennan's assault had forced a confrontation that exposed systemic failures the institution could no longer ignore. His violence had catalyzed change that saved careers, opened opportunities, and strengthened the very force he'd claimed to be protecting.
He'd meant to prove women didn't belong. Instead, he'd proven exactly the opposite. The quiet professional doesn't need to announce their competence. They don't need validation or recognition. They simply do the job, maintain the standard, and trust that performance speaks louder than prejudice. And when the loudest voice in the room tries to drown out that quiet professionalism with aggression and arrogance, the professional responds with disciplined precision that ends the argument permanently. 20 years, and the lesson still held true. Real strength isn't measured in volume or violence. It's measured in the courage to maintain discipline when discipline costs everything. It's measured in the choice to transform pain into progress. It's measured in the daily decision to be professional, even when others abandon professionalism. Lieutenant Marcus Brennan learned that lesson the hard way, flat on his back, on a Fort Bragg training mat, staring up at the woman he'd underestimated, humiliated, and assaulted. The woman who'd responded with exactly enough force to stop the threat, and not 1 ounce more. 40 SEAL operators learned it watching a quiet professional demonstrate that true warriors don't need to prove their worth through dominance. They prove it through competence. And thousands of young women learned it through the ripples that spread from one violent moment, transformed into lasting institutional change. The standards never changed. The warriors who met them simply stopped being defined by assumptions about what they should be, and started being defined by what they actually were. Professionals committed to mission, team, and country above ego. That was Sarah Chen's legacy. Not the 1.8 seconds it took to drop a lieutenant who'd lost his mind, but the 20 years of quiet, consistent excellence that proved the only thing louder than arrogance is competence, and the only thing stronger than bias is truth.